Hey everyone, welcome to the next video of the build. Right now I'm working on the body and I'm pretty sick of dealing with it. I've had to go back and redo a lot of work over and over, mostly due to the finish. I've had to go back and sand down due to orange peel and other things, and then I've had to recoat and sand down, and I've come into all kinds of different issues with that. So right now it is Wednesday night, so hopefully you're seeing this video on Thursday, and that means I plan to have the guitar done by Saturday. So we'll see if that actually happens. I'm working as hard as I can, putting in as much time as I possibly can into it. I apologize for any dark shots. I have been working on this a lot at night, and all I have is the porch light and my headlamp, so I'm very limited on light, and hopefully you can still see what's going on. I'm planning to have one more video to finish out the build after this one, and then when I'm done with that, we're going to do a couple things. First, I'm going to have a video showcasing the complete build from start to finish. There's not going to be any commentary or anything like that, but I will have a special treat for those of you who are interested in music. And then I also plan to have a short demo of the guitar. That's assuming that it works. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoy.
So this is one of many times that I sanded this guitar back. Now we clean it off a little and get ready to spray again. And I got some spots, some little blotches that came out there, so I was trying to correct it as best I could. Ended up having to sand that back down and then coat it again. So I was using this Spray Max clear coat right there. Eventually I sanded it all off. I started with just dry sanding there. I don't know why. I should have just started with wet sanding. And now it's getting dark out, so the headlamp comes on. From this distance, you can't really see all of the flaws. And now we increase our grit. So my goal was to go up to 3,000, and I don't know if it's on one of these videos or where it happened, but I ended up burning through this finish and then had to reassess what I was doing. And I think in that top edge right there is one place where it happened. I think it actually happened when I was wet sanding it, but the point is I sanded a lot. And there we are going to 400 with wet sanding. Here I wanted to tear through a lot of material because I wasn't getting very far earlier. And I was sick of doing that, so now I decided to switch back to the neck. And last time you might have seen that we put the frets in. Now we are filing down the edges. You're going to need some kind of level file for this. The leveling beam with sandpaper would not work here because everything's too sharp. Next up, I'm filling the tiny little gaps with some sawdust and super glue. And now I'm cutting the base of the neck where it goes into the neck pocket of the body. I'm thinning that out because it was way too thick. It's actually made it look a lot more like a Telecaster neck with how it was thinned out right there. And now we just need to flatten it all out because when I cut it, it didn't cut perfectly straight, but that's totally fine. Gave ourselves a little extra material so that we could sand down without being worried. More sanding, this time with the leveling beam to get that nice and flat. Now we're checking to make sure that the neck is flat. I'm going to start leveling the frets soon, and right now I'm checking with a fret rocker, and there's a few spots where it was uneven, so we definitely needed to sand down, but we have to make sure that the neck is level first. I was admittedly a little bit worried earlier on because I loosened the truss rod as far as it would go a few days ago, basically when I was putting the frets in, all that sort of stuff. So I was kind of worried that we might not have a perfectly flat neck right there if I couldn't loosen it anymore. Well, the neck shifted as it usually happens, and it was actually needed to be tightened, so a couple turns on that, tightened it, and it was nice and flat, perfect for leveling. After we do the beveling, now we're going to cover up the fretboard. We want to protect it with everything that we're doing. Terrible view right there with the light in the way. Now we're marking the top of the frets with permanent marker, and that's so we can see which ones have not been leveled as we use the leveling beam. So it's going to start taking off the permanent marker right there, and then wherever the marker still exists, that means it hasn't been sanded, so we need to keep going until all of the markers gone across the board. So this is how you can really tell where your high spots and low spots are. Now I'm just using a ruler to check how level we are. Here's my fret crowning file. That one was extremely cheap, but it works well enough. And we're basically carving the frets so that you get a nice thin edge right in the middle where the string touches. This took quite a while. I actually started it at night, and then I continued on the next day, as you can see right there. This is a little file, and it has flat edges, so it's not a file on every edge, but you can run it along the fretboard so that you can get the edges down of the frets. This is how you make them nice and round. Get all the little burrs out, anything like that. This is a great file for detailed work. You can find other ways to get this done, but I highly recommend spending the money to get a file like this. Now we're just working our way up with sandpaper. I believe I went up through 2000 grit on the fretboard. I think I started with about 400, and there you can see all the metal on my fingertips. You should probably wear gloves. And now we're using fret rubbers to get the final scratches out before we polish. I'm using a medium there, and now I switch to the fine right there. Now we are installing the nut. I measured it out already. I put the tape there to protect the headstock with any glue that would squeeze out. And that was actually a bad call because some of the tape got stuck, and there I am using a razor blade trying to get the rest of it out. And then I had to go back and fix those little parts because I took a little bit of the finish off. So don't do that. And now we're back to the body with more wet sanding. I think at this point I had used a different finish and then was sanding that back. I did this so many times that I stopped recording a lot of the sections because, as you can tell, it's pretty boring. Now we're on to buffing out the body. And we're starting with this polish. I've never used this polish before. I've never really buffed much before, contrary to my name, surprisingly. But it looks pretty good from there on the shot. This little rotary buffer works very well, I think. Alright, there's a look. You can see the shininess, the reflections, all that. Can't see all the little flaws that are still in there. Now we've taped up the neck. We're going to put the finish on the neck. We want to protect the fretboard. I'm just going to use oil on the fretboard after it's done. So here I'm using a clear coat lacquer. I had some issues, and you can see the little drips happening there. Managed to sand those out. Here's a look at our back plate. So I carved out with a scalpel blade a little line to help me basically as a guide. I've never used a coping saw before this. I bought it a while ago. I knew it might come in handy. I've seen other people use it, and I decided to try it out here. And I got to tell you that this thing's fantastic. It was only like $6 too. Makes real quick work of that plexiglass I'm using for the back plate. The other thing here is I use the spindle sander to finish up the back plate, which was fantastic. I've never used this before. I always did it by hand. Saved so much time. I had this thing done in 20 minutes. So next we're going to paint it, and then we're going to continue to work on the body, hopefully attach everything soon. That's all I've got for this video, so stay tuned for the next one. By the way, I think that looks really cool without it being painted, being able to see in there. So might do something with that in the future.